Oregon is now within 100,000 acres of the worst wildfire season in its recorded history. 1,840,000 acres have burned across the state this year. The modern record is 1,940,000, set in 2024. At the rate these fires have been moving, that gap closes in days. 30 large wildfires are burning right now. And this weekend, a fire weather watch takes effect across the region. Dry air, high wind, and everything crews have gained this week goes on trial. Here is where every major fire stands, what changed in the last 24 hours, and what you need to do about it. Start with the fire that is not slowing down. The Coleman Creek fire in southeastern Oregon has reached 200,000 acres. Containment is zero. It has been zero since the fire started. Yesterday, it stood at 180,000 acres. The day before that, 146,000. This fire has added more than 50,000 acres in 2 days, and no line has held anywhere on its perimeter. It is burning in grass and brush near Crane, in Harney and Malheur counties, with wind-driven runs and spotting ahead of the main front. Level 3 Go Now evacuation orders are in effect in Malheur County. Now, here is the number that explains everything. 121 people are assigned to it. 200,000 acres, 121 firefighters. That is not a failure of effort, it is arithmetic. Nearly 18,000 people are working fires across the Northwest right now, and there is nobody left to send. Now, the fires where crews are winning because the contrast matters. The Rowe Creek Complex, burning across Crook, Jefferson, and Wheeler counties, stands at 300,000 acres and 42% contained. 2,200 people are working it, 70 crews, and 128 engines. It is the largest single operation in the state. Last night, the fire pushed again in the Mill Creek area north of Prineville, driven by gusty winds through light, flashy fuels on steep ground. Crews built additional line around the run overnight and held it. Homes there are still standing this morning because of that work. Level 1, 2, and 3 evacuations remain in place across the complex. 25 structures have been lost on this fire, and it has cost nearly $18 million so far. There is a community meeting in Prineville where residents can speak directly with incident personnel. If you live north or east of town, go to it. The Hay Creek Complex west of Condon is at 200,000 acres and 90% contained. Fire behavior there is down to creeping and smoldering. Big Grass, near the Idaho line, has reached 301,000 acres at 15%. Second Flat, outside Burns, is at 102,000 acres and 18%. Both of those containment numbers were in single digits 2 days ago. Bald Mountain went from 1% contained to 29. Jackass Butte went from 26 to 70. Hat is at 89%. Powder River is at 96, and it is expected to be fully contained today. The 10-mile fire near Madras is finished, off the national list entirely. Further down the list, the picture is more mixed. The shingle fire southeast of Mitchell sits at 64,000 acres and 6%, where it has been stuck for days, with evacuations still in place. Fox, northeast of Huntington, has passed 68,000 acres and finally has 10% containment after nearly a week at zero, though 8 structures have already burned there. Grasshopper in the Mount Hood National Forest has passed 18,000 acres and remains at zero containment. But its fire behavior has eased from extreme to moderate, and the crew there tripled overnight to more than 370 people. Hagen, east of Pendleton, has passed 31,000 acres at 3%, with uphill runs and spotting. Homes and energy infrastructure are threatened, and evacuations remain in effect. The bench fire on the Warm Springs Reservation has passed 64,000 acres and holds at 22% contained. That containment figure was 3% 2 days ago. The jump came from firing operations along the northwest perimeter, where crews deliberately burned fuel ahead of the fire so it had nothing left to reach. Part of the acreage on that fire was set by the people fighting it. 13 structures have been lost there. 800 people are assigned. At Akawa Butte, northeast of Sisters, the fire actually shrank. More accurate mapping brought it down to 27,400 acres, and containment climbed to 19%. Fire behavior is down to creeping and smoldering. State fire marshal crews have finished their work protecting structures there. 10 days ago, that fire was running at a neighborhood on the northern edge of Sisters. That is what a win looks like in this season. It is worth looking at what these fires have cost. because the money shows where the danger actually was. East Evans Creek Road near Rogue River has burned 15,000 acres and cost nearly $58 million. Akawa Butte at 27,000 acres has cost $26.5 million. The Salmon Fire at 1,400 acres has cost almost $34 million. Now compare that with Big Grass, 301,000 acres, $3.6 million. The difference is not the size of the fire, it is what stands next to it. When you see a small fire with an enormous budget, that is a town being defended. It is worth stopping to explain how a state ends up here, because this did not build slowly. On the night of the 15th of July, dry thunderstorms moved across the Cascades and out over eastern Oregon. A dry thunderstorm produces lightning and thunder, but the rain evaporates before it reaches the ground. You get thousands of strikes landing on bone-dry vegetation with no moisture behind them. Dozens of fires ignited that night. The Rowe Creek Complex started then. So did the Bench Fire, so did Kaiser Canyon across the border in Washington. A second round of lightning came through on the 25th of July. The grass fires now driving Oregon toward its record, Coleman Creek, Second Flat, Big Grass, started in that storm. And lightning does not always start a fire immediately. A strike can smolder inside a tree or underground for days before anything shows on the surface. Those are called holdover fires, and crews are still finding them from storms that passed more than 2 weeks ago. The ground was ready for all of it. A warm winter, record-low snowpack, and drought through spring left the state primed. Researchers say the western snow drought that set this up was made roughly 4 times more likely by a warming climate. Now, the part that matters most if you are anywhere near this. Evacuation levels are changing daily and in both directions this week. Here's what they mean, because the difference is not cosmetic. Level 1 means be ready. There is a fire in your area, gather documents, medication, and a few days of clothing and put them where you can grab them. Level 2 means be set. Significant danger. If you have animals or anyone who needs extra time to move, this is when you go early rather than wait. Nobody will think less of you for leaving at Level 2. Level 3 means go now, leave immediately. Do not stop to gather belongings. Fire officials are blunt about this because a Level 3 order often means there will not be time for a second warning. Ranchers across eastern Oregon are moving cattle off public rangeland that has burned and scrambling to find feed for animals that no longer have any. That is a slower disaster than a house fire, and it will outlast the smoke by a year. The state has opened a 24-hour hotline for people who need help. If you have lost a home or been displaced, use it. Closures are extensive and changing. The National Park Service has shut the Clarno and Painted Hills units of the John Day fossil beds. Federal land managers have closed both banks of the John Day River from Service Creek north to the Columbia. Around Sisters, the Black Butte Trail and several campgrounds remain closed. Travel restrictions are in place along Highway 19 near Gwendolyn. Check road conditions before you leave rather than on the way, because closures on these fires are changing by the hour. Evacuation maps are published live, and Central Oregon agencies run a text alert service, which is the fastest way to hear that something has changed near you. And if you want to help the families who have lost houses, send money rather than goods. Truckloads of donated supplies take up the same roads the fire crews need. One more thing. There is a temporary flight restriction over the fire areas in force around the clock. Flying a drone near a wildfire is illegal, and it grounds the aircraft that crews depend on. As the incident team put it, if you fly, we can't. On air quality, the picture improved this week along the Highway 97 corridor through Central Oregon, with most towns back into the low range and only Prineville above moderate. That is temporary, and here is what the numbers mean when the smoke returns. Anything above 100 on the air quality index is unhealthy for sensitive groups. Above 150 is unhealthy for everyone. Above 200 is very unhealthy. The harmful part of wildfire smoke is fine particulate matter, small enough to travel deep into the lungs and pass into the bloodstream. Stay indoors where you can, keep windows closed, run air conditioning on recirculate rather than drawing outside air in, and avoid hard exercise outside, because heavy breathing pulls far more smoke into your lungs. Children, older adults, pregnant women, and anyone with asthma or heart and lung conditions are at real risk, not theoretical risk. Now the weather, and this is the part that decides the next week. Relative humidity across the inland Northwest is running between 8 and 20%, which forecasters describe as unseasonably low for late July. Overnight recovery is failing in places, coming back only to between 10 and 30%. That night window is when crews do their most productive work. When humidity stops recovering after dark, fires burn around the clock. Temperatures are running 5 to 15 degrees above normal. And a fire weather watch has been issued for the weekend. Dry conditions and high winds. Every containment line built this week at Rowe Creek, at Hay Creek, at Bald Mountain, at Bench is about to be tested by exactly the conditions that broke this state open 2 weeks ago. Wind is the specific danger. Through most of this week, the air stayed relatively light outside the Cascade Gaps, and that is a large part of why containment climbed. That advantage is ending. A wind shift is more dangerous than strong, steady wind because it turns the long flank of a fire into a new head, and the flank is exactly where crews are standing. There is no rain in the forecast anywhere in the Northwest. What would actually end this is a change of pattern, a Pacific system bringing cooler air and real moisture into the fire zones. Nothing like that is on the map. So here is where Oregon stands tonight. 30 large fires, 1,840,000 acres burned this season, 100,000 short of the worst year on record. Containment climbing on most fires for the first time in a week, and one fire at 200,000 acres with no containment at all. This has cost more than firefighting money. 4 firefighters have died in Colorado this summer, including a helicopter pilot who went down at Silverjack Reservoir on the 12th of July while working the Gold Mountain fire. He was flying alone. Across the border in Washington, the Kaiser Canyon fire has now burned more than 128,000 acres on the Colville Reservation, and 44 structures are gone. That is the heaviest structure loss anywhere in this region. It also burned through the Nespelem Cemetery. Crews dug line around the graves, but headstones were charred and melted. One tribal member buried her mother, her sister, and her son there. Less than a mile away sits the Nez Perce Cemetery, where Chief Joseph is buried beneath a white obelisk. For days, it was ringed by ash, the smoke thick enough to blot out the sun. The flames never reached it. His descendants still live in Nespelem. One cemetery was saved, one was not. Both were sacred ground, and the fire did not distinguish between them. Behind every acreage figure in this report is somebody's ranch, somebody's home, somebody's town. If you are in one of these counties, take the advisory seriously this weekend, even if the sky looks better today. Levels came down this week. With the wind coming, they can go back up. Keep your phone charged and your fuel tank full. And check on your neighbors, particularly older people and anyone living alone, because they are often the last to hear that something has changed. If you are watching from somewhere safe, spare a thought for the 18,000 people working in that smoke across the Northwest, and for the crews who traveled from Australia and New Zealand to help. Take care of yourselves out there, look after each other, and stay safe.